When I turned 66, I wanted nothing extravagant, just a quiet dinner, surrounded by the people I loved most. I spent nearly 2 weeks preparing for it, even though it was only going to be a small family gathering. The dining room looked beautiful, if I may say so myself. I laid out my best tablecloth, arranged fresh yellow daisies, my favorite, into a mason jar centerpiece, and placed 8 porcelain plates around the table, one for each person. My son Daniel, his wife Sabrina, their children Jaden and Lily, my sister Elaine, and her husband, and of course, me. I'd even found the perfect dress, a soft lavender number with tiny embroidered flowers that reminded me of spring. My late husband once said it made me look radiant. I wanted to feel that way again, just for one night. By 6 p.m., everything was ready. The roast chicken was resting under foil, the mashed potatoes still warm in the Dutch oven. I had even baked a carrot cake with cream cheese frosting from scratch. Despite my arthritis acting up the night before, I lit the candles, poured a small glass of wine, and waited, then waited some more. At 6:15, I double-checked my calendar. Had I gotten the time wrong? Number. It said right there, birthday dinner, 6 p.m. I had even sent a reminder text 2 days before, and Daniel had replied with a thumbs-up emoji. Nothing fancy, but enough to assure me they were coming. By 6:45, the wine tasted bitter. I kept glancing at the door, listening for footsteps, a knock, laughter, but the house stayed silent, the kind of silence that grows heavier with each passing minute. I called Daniel straight to voicemail. Sabrina's phone rang, then stopped. I tried my sister Elaine, who normally picked up after 2 rings. Nothing. By 7:15, I knew they weren't coming. I sat down slowly at the head of the table, looking across the untouched plates. The candles had melted low, dripping wax onto the linens I'd just ironed that morning. My hands trembled as I reached for my phone again. Maybe there had been an emergency? But no. There, on my screen, right at the top of my feed, was a photo that made my heart lurch. Daniel, Sabrina, and the kids were dressed in bright vacation clothes, smiling wide on the deck of a cruise ship. The ocean stretched behind them, blue and endless. Sabrina's caption read, "Living our best life with the best people. Family getaway memories in the making." I froze. My roast sat cold in the kitchen, untouched. The carrot cake still waited to be cut. And my entire family, the people I'd raised, loved, supported through every hardship, had chosen to leave me behind, on my birthday, without a word. I didn't cry. Not right away. I just sat there, staring at the photo, feeling something inside me crack. Not break, crack, like thin ice under heavy boots. After I saw that photo, my entire family smiling on a cruise ship while I sat alone in a house full of candles, cold food, and silence, I didn't cry. Not that night. I just sat there, numb, my body present but my mind spiraling somewhere else. The way Sabrina beamed in that picture, nestled perfectly beside Daniel, one hand resting on Jaden's shoulder, like she had it all figured out. My eyes kept drifting to that smile, so bright, so proud. I'd seen it before, but I hadn't realized until that moment how rehearsed it always looked. Like she wasn't smiling because she felt something, but because she wanted others to believe something. That her life was perfect. That her family was complete. That I didn't exist. As I sat there at the empty table, my heart began piecing things together. Little moments from the past few years, moments I'd brushed off, made excuses for, or tried to forget, came rushing back like a wave. They hadn't just forgotten my birthday. This wasn't a last-minute cruise or a fluke of bad planning. This was a pattern A deliberate, well-executed plan to shut me out. The first time I truly felt it was subtle. So subtle that I told myself I was imagining things. It was Jaden's 4th birthday. I remember how excited I was to see him blow out his candles. I'd spent the night before wrapping his gift. A handmade quilt with dinosaurs, stitched in a nod to the phase he was going through, where everything had to roar. The invitation said 2 p.m., so I arrived at 1:45, eager to help set up. But when I got to the venue, Sabrina met me at the door with that tight, apologetic smile of hers. "Oh, Helen," she said, touching my arm like she was comforting a stranger. "Didn't Daniel tell you? We had to move the party to tomorrow." Jaden woke up feeling a little off this morning. But behind her, I could hear children laughing. I could see balloons through the window, bright reds and blues. A magician's hat peeked out from behind a curtain. The party was happening. I stood there like a fool while she blocked the doorway. That night, I called Daniel. "Oh no, Mom," he said, genuinely confused. "The party was today. Sabrina must have gotten the messages mixed up." But that was just the beginning. There was the first day of kindergarten, Jaden's big milestone. I'd asked Sabrina 3 times what time they were dropping him off. I wanted to be there, camera ready, to capture his little nervous smile as he walked into the building. "We're doing it super early," she told me. "Like 7 a.m., probably too early for you with traffic and all." But something didn't sit right. I showed up anyway, just before 8:30. The teacher at the door told me Jaden had arrived at the regular time. I'd missed him. Missed his wave. Missed his big moment. Again. I didn't confront anyone that day. What would I even say? That I didn't believe my own daughter-in-law? That I thought she lied about the timing of a kindergarten drop-off? I began to second-guess myself. My memory. My instincts. Sabrina was clever. She never said outright, "Don't come." She just made it harder for me to show up, moved things without notice, gave vague details, and always with that careful, sweet tone that made it sound like she was doing me a favor. Last Christmas was the hardest, before my birthday. 2 days before the holiday, Sabrina called me. Her voice was full of concern, almost maternal, like I was the fragile one. "Helen, I hate to do this, but Daniel's been under so much stress. Work is just draining him. We're going to keep Christmas small this year. Just the 4 of us. Intimate. I hope you understand." I told her it was fine, that I understood, and I hung up before she could hear the crack in my voice. I spent that Christmas watching old movies, heating leftover stew, trying not to cry into my wine glass. I told myself it was fine. Just 1 year. Families have seasons, right? But then, a week later, my sister Elaine called. "I saw the photos from Daniel's Christmas party," she said. "You looked great." I froze. "Photos?" "Yeah, on Sabrina's Instagram. Looked like 20 people there. Even that neighbor. The one with the French bulldog. I hadn't even been invited. It hit me then that I hadn't missed anything. I'd been excluded. Silently, skillfully, and repeatedly. And all the while, Sabrina had painted herself as this loving, thoughtful wife. To outsiders, she looked like a dream daughter-in-law. To Daniel, she was the center of his universe. And to me, she was the gatekeeper, controlling access to my own family. What made it worse was Daniel. My sweet, earnest boy. The one I raised alone after his father passed away. He used to call me every Sunday just to chat. We'd have lunch twice a month, like clockwork. He came to me for advice on jobs, for help when the babies were colicky. He was my lifeline, and I was his. But slowly, after marrying Sabrina, he changed. At first it was small. Sorry, Mom. Can't talk right now, we're running errands. Then it became, we'll have to reschedule Sunday dinner. Sabrina planned something special. Eventually, the calls dwindled to birthdays and holidays, and even those came with rushed voices and background noise. Sabrina never attacked me outright. No cruel words, no open hostility, just small things. The way she interrupted when I tried to speak to the kids. Jaden, Grandma's had a long day. Sweetie, go show Daddy your drawing. Or the way she'd give me that look when I brought homemade cookies like I'd broken some unspoken rule. Oh, you didn't have to bring those, she'd say, already clearing space in the pantry like she wanted them out of sight. She managed me. I became something to be handled. Not loved. Not respected. Managed. And Daniel? He didn't see it. He thought she was just being helpful. Protective. She worries about you, Mom, he said once. Thinks you might be overdoing it. That stung more than anything. My own son. Parroting her words back to me like gospel. I began to wonder if I was going crazy. If maybe I was imagining it. But the pattern was too consistent. The pain too sharp. It was like I was watching myself slowly disappear from the family photo album one frame at a time. Not because I'd done something wrong. Not because I wasn't trying. But because someone was quietly erasing me. And then came the birthday dinner. The final proof. The moment I stopped doubting and started seeing things for what they truly were. That wasn't a forgotten dinner. It wasn't poor planning. It was deliberate. Planned. Executed. The photo of them smiling on that cruise ship. It wasn't just a happy family memory. It was a trophy. A victory for Sabrina. A moment she chose to post at that exact time, knowing full well I'd see it. Because it wasn't enough to exclude me. She wanted me to know I'd been excluded. She wanted me to feel it. And God help me, I did. 3 days after my birthday, the one no one came to, I was still walking around the house in a daze, floating between sadness and numb routine. I'd thrown out the roast, though not before reheating it once and telling myself maybe someone would still stop by late. The carrot cake sat untouched in the fridge, sealed in plastic wrap, like a quiet monument to my misplaced hope. I hadn't heard from Daniel or Sabrina. Not a call. Not even a lazy, sorry text. The only noise in the house was the soft ticking of the clock above the stove. It was Tuesday morning, and I had just sat down with my second cup of coffee when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Honestly, I didn't expect visitors at all these days. Sabrina had slowly made sure of that. Still, I peered through the peephole out of instinct and froze. A man stood on my porch. Mid-42nd. Tall, with neatly combed dark hair, and the kind of eyes that looked like they used to smile more than they did now. He wore a navy coat, slightly wrinkled like he'd been traveling, and clutched something in his hand, maybe a folder or an envelope. But it wasn't his appearance that made my heart beat faster. It was the way he kept looking over his shoulder, like someone being watched, like someone trying to decide whether to knock again or walk away forever. I almost didn't open the door. After the birthday, after the way my own family had discarded me, I didn't have the energy for strangers. But something about the way he stood there, like the weight of the world was balanced on his next breath, made me curious. I opened the door just enough to keep the chain latched. Yes? I asked cautiously. He looked up, startled, as if he hadn't expected me to answer. Mrs. Helen Adams? My body tensed. Who's asking? My name is Michael Tran, he said slowly, voice gentle, measured. I need to talk to you. About your daughter-in-law. About Sabrina. That name hit the air like a rock through a stained glass window. I gripped the edge of the door tighter. What about her? Michael exhaled shakily. This is going to sound unbelievable. but I think my son might be living in your son's house." I stared at him. For a second, I wondered if this was some scam, some crazy person looking for attention. But there was something so broken in the way he said it, "my son," that I felt the breath catch in my throat. "Are you talking about Jaden?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. "Yes," he whispered. 7 years old. Scar on his chin from a bike fall. Loves dinosaurs. That's him, isn't it?" My mouth went dry. "How? How do you know that?" "Because I've been watching him," he said quickly. But not in a creepy way. I swear. Just from a distance. For months. Trying to decide what to do. How to tell you. Whether I even had the right. I closed the door. Unlatched the chain. And opened it wide. "Come in." Michael stepped inside cautiously. Like he was entering sacred ground. He sat on my couch, like someone expecting to be thrown out at any moment. I offered him coffee, and he declined with a tight shake of the head. His hands were clasped so tightly in his lap that his knuckles had turned white. "I don't know where to begin," he said, "but I guess the simplest place is the truth. Sabrina and I were together before she met your son. For 2 years. We were serious, living together, talking about marriage. Then she got pregnant." I sat down across from him, suddenly ice cold. Despite the sun pouring through the window, I was thrilled. He continued, "I thought we were starting a family, but she kept saying she needed space, time, said she wasn't ready for something that permanent. I figured it was just nerves. Then one day, I came home from work and she was gone. Everything, her clothes, her photos, even her toothbrush, like she'd never lived there. Did you try to find her?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "For months," he said, eyes glassy. "Filed a police report, hired a private investigator, posted online, on every platform I could. But it was like she disappeared, off the face of the earth. And eventually the investigator told me what I didn't want to hear. Some people just don't want to be found. So I stopped looking. Until..." He paused, reached into his coat pocket, pulled out his phone, and showed me a photo. It was of him, maybe age 6 or 7. Big brown eyes. Same crooked little smile Jaden makes when he's shy. Same stubborn chin. I knew that face. Not from memory, but from every birthday. Every bedtime story. Every macaroni necklace Jaden had ever handed me. "That's you," I said. He nodded. "And that's Jaden, my son." The room felt like it tilted. I pressed my palm to my chest, trying to steady the sudden thudding of my heart. "Do you have proof?" He reached into a folder he'd been gripping and handed me a crisp envelope. "I do now. Hair sample from the barber Sabrina takes him to. Matched against mine. 99.8% paternity probability." I stared at the envelope but didn't open it. I couldn't. Not yet. "I didn't come here to destroy your family," Michael said quickly, his voice trembling. "But I had to tell you, because I've been watching from afar and something's not right. You're not in any of the pictures. You're never around. I thought maybe you'd passed away, but then I saw you once at the grocery store, and I saw how Jaden looked right through you." Tears threatened to rise, but I blinked them back. "She's doing it again," he whispered. "Isolating people, controlling everything, making sure no one asks questions. That's why she erased me, and now she's doing the same to you." I swallowed hard. "Why tell me? Why not just go to Daniel directly?" "Because he won't believe me. Not without thinking I have some kind of agenda. But you know something's off, don't you?" I nodded slowly. I've known for a while. I just didn't have a name for it. Michael leaned forward, his voice steadier now. We have a chance to protect him. To protect Jaden. And your son. But we have to work together. Before Sabrina, or whatever her real name is, cuts everyone else out for good. I looked down at the envelope. This piece of paper could destroy everything Daniel thought he knew. It could break his heart, but it could also save him, and save Jaden. Her real name, Michael added, is Monica Weaver. She's done this before twice. 2 men, 2 divorces, 2 settlements. Same pattern. She runs when things get hard, reinvents herself, and starts again. Everything snapped into focus. The strange timelines. The premature birth that never quite added up. The rushed wedding. The manipulation. The lies. Then she picked the wrong family this time. I said, my voice low, steady, because I'm not going to let her hurt my son. Or my grandson. Michael nodded. Then we start with the truth. It took me 3 more days to build up the nerve to call Daniel. 3 days of staring at the DNA results Michael left behind, tucked in their manila envelope like a quiet bomb waiting to go off. I must have read the words 100 times. Probability of paternity, 99.8%. Cold clinical language confirming what I'd already seen in that childhood photo of Michael. What I'd known deep down the moment he described Jaden's scar. His smile. The way he tilted his head when thinking. He was Michael's son, not Daniel's. And Daniel had no idea. He'd built his entire life around a lie. A beautiful house. 2 children. A marriage. And all of it began with deception. I picked up the phone on a Thursday afternoon and dialed. My hands trembled with every ring. Daniel answered, cheerful and casual like nothing had changed. Hey, Mom, he said. How are you doing? I'd like to have dinner with all of you. I said calmly. You. Sabrina. The kids. Okay, he replied slowly. Something wrong? No. I lied. I've just been doing a lot of thinking. I think it's time for a real family conversation. There was a pause. I could hear Sabrina in the background asking, what's she want? Daniel cupped the phone. I heard muffled voices. Then he came back. Sabrina's just wondering. Is this about the birthday? I smiled into the phone, though I knew he couldn't see it. Of course she was worried. Sabrina's instincts were sharp. She always knew when the ground beneath her was beginning to shift. Tell Sabrina I'm not upset. Just want to reconnect. I'll cook. Saturday at 6? Another long pause, then. Sure, Mom. We'll be there. After I hung up, I called Michael. It's happening, I told him. Saturday. We met twice more that week, carefully laying out what I would say, what I would show. The DNA results were only the beginning. Michael's investigator had uncovered records. Sabrina's real name was Monica Weaver, and she'd been married twice before, both times to men with stable incomes and good reputations. Both times, she disappeared within 2 years, taking hefty alimony settlements and leaving chaos behind. A pattern, a playbook. Saturday evening arrived gray and chilly, typical for October. I prepared Daniel's favorite meal: pot roast, garlic mashed potatoes, and green beans with toasted almonds. The smells of our past filled the house, memories simmering in broth and butter. The good china was set on the table, the same one I'd used for the birthday dinner no one attended. The irony was thick, almost laughable. They arrived precisely at 6. Jaden came through the door first, all bouncing energy and excited chatter. Grandma, I learned how to swim. Want to see my doggy paddle? My heart clenched. I bent down and hugged him tightly. feeling the weight of the truth settle heavier on my shoulders. Maybe after dinner, sweetheart. Go wash up. Lily followed behind, more quiet, clinging to a doll and glancing at me shyly. She let me kiss her forehead before heading to the bathroom. Then came Daniel, hugging me warmly, his face worn but smiling. Smells amazing, Mom. I missed your cooking. You look tired, I said gently. He did. His eyes had bags under them. His smile didn't quite reach his eyes. It's been a long quarter at work, he said. The merger's been stressful. Sabrina trailed in last, wearing a cream-colored dress that made her look almost angelic. Her hair was curled, her makeup flawless. She was all charm and polish. Helen, she said, with her well-practiced warmth. This is lovely. I nodded. I'm glad you could all make it. We ate dinner like any other family might. I kept the conversation light, asking the kids about school, laughing at their stories from the cruise. Sabrina played the perfect mother, cutting Jaden's meat, reminding Lily to use her napkin. But I watched her carefully now. I noticed how she interrupted Jaden when he started to tell a story about missing me on the trip. Let's not make Grandma sad, she'd said, smiling, as if concern had motivated the interruption. I saw how she redirected Lily's attention when the little girl asked, "Why didn't Grandma come with us?" Sabrina was performing, managing the narrative, as always. After the plates were cleared, I turned to the children and said, "Why don't you two play in the living room while the adults talk?" Sabrina objected immediately. They should probably get ready to go. It's a school night. This won't take long, I said, my voice firm. And it's important. Hubby. That flicker of fear crossed her face again. Barely there, but I saw it. She knew. Once the kids were gone, I took a deep breath and returned to the table. The manila folder sat next to my coffee mug, like a loaded weapon. So, Daniel said lightly, trying to mask his discomfort. What did you want to talk about? I want to talk about the truth, I said quietly. About family. About who we are. Sabrina stiffened. That's a bit philosophical for a Saturday dinner, don't you think? Is it? I replied, and reached for the folder. Because what I'm about to share might change everything. I opened it slowly and laid the DNA results on the table. These are paternity test results for Jaden. The room fell silent. Daniel stared at the paper like it might catch fire. Sabrina didn't move. A paternity test? Daniel whispered. Why would you? How would you? Because Jaden isn't your son, Daniel, I said softly. Not biologically. He's Michael Trans. Sabrina stood up so quickly her chair screeched across the floor. This is insane. Helen, what kind of sick? Sit down, Monica, I said, and the name cracked through the air like thunder. She froze, paled. Daniel looked between us, confusion turning into something deeper. Monica? I pulled out the investigator's report. Her marriage records. The timelines. Your wife's name is Monica Weaver. She's been married before twice. Same pattern. Finds a man with money or stability. Gets pregnant. Marries quickly. Isolates him from family. Then moves on. That's not true. Sabrina, no, Monica said. But her voice had changed. The mask was slipping. Jaden was born 7 months after you two met, I said. You thought he was premature. He wasn't. He was full term. The timeline fits exactly with her relationship with Michael. Daniel picked up the DNA paper. His hands trembled. This can't be real. She planned all of it, I said. And she's been working ever since to keep you from seeing it. To keep me out. To control everything. Sabrina backed toward the hallway. Daniel, Don't let her do this. Don't let her poison you against me. Daniel's voice broke. Is any of it real? Did you ever love me? Or was I just convenient? She didn't answer. Couldn't. From the living room, Jaden's voice rang out. Daddy? Can we have dessert? Daniel closed his eyes. A tear rolled down his cheek. What do I tell them? He whispered. I reached across the table and placed my hand over his. We tell them the truth. Carefully. Lovingly. As a family. Sabrina didn't speak. She stood at the edge of the dining room, hands clenched into tight fists at her sides, her cream-colored dress suddenly looking too bright under the warm light of the chandelier. Her gaze flicked to the hallway where the children played, and I could see the war happening behind her eyes, fight or flee. But her usual confidence had slipped. Her composure, the flawless mask she'd worn since the day she married my son, was cracked wide open now, and underneath it wasn't fear. It was calculation. Daniel sat still, holding the paternity papers in both hands like they might dissolve into dust. Jaden's, not mine, he said quietly, to no one in particular. Not biologically. Then he looked up at Sabrina, and I saw it in his face, the shattering. You knew, he said. You always knew. Sabrina opened her mouth, then closed it again. Her voice, when it finally emerged, was softer, more deliberate. It's not that simple. Yes, I said, leaning forward. It is. You don't understand what I went through, Sabrina snapped, stepping forward now, her voice rising like a fire finally catching. You don't know what it was like. I was alone. I was scared. Michael, he was controlling. He pushed too hard. Too fast. I didn't want that kind of life. And so you made a new one, I replied. Calm, but firm. By lying. I protected myself. And I protected Jaden, she said sharply. You think I had choices? I did what I had to do to survive. Daniel stood slowly. You did what you had to do to manipulate. You came into my life, pregnant with another man's child, and made me believe he was mine. You loved him, Sabrina said, her voice suddenly imploring. You still do. That's not the point, Daniel shouted, his voice cracking. I love him. Yes, he is my son in every way that matters. But I was supposed to know the truth. You took that from me. Sabrina turned to me, her tone now bitter and biting. You did this. You just couldn't leave us alone, could you? I watched you erase me, I said quietly. For years. Event by event. Memory by memory. You made sure I was the last to know everything. And the first to be left out. You trained my grandchildren not to need me. You trained Daniel not to trust me. And all of it was to protect the lie. I protected my family, she hissed. No, I replied. You built a prison and called it a home. Sabrina's breathing became shallow, her eyes darting to Daniel as if he might come to her defense. He didn't. I want you to leave, Daniel said finally, his voice shaking. Now. Her eyes widened. Daniel. Now. For a moment, it seemed like she might resist, that she might launch into some final manipulation. But then she seemed to realize she was cornered. She'd played the long game and lost. She nodded once, stiffly, like a soldier accepting defeat, and walked toward the door. Sabrina, I said as she passed. Or Monica. One more thing. She stopped, back still turned. If you try to take those children, we'll stop you. If you try to disappear again, we'll find you. You're not the only one who knows how to dig for the truth. So, Go quietly. And if you care about those kids even a little, don't make them watch you self-destruct." She didn't reply. The front door opened, closed, and just like that, she was gone. The silence afterward was thick. Too thick. I could hear Jaden and Lily laughing faintly from the living room, still blissfully unaware that their world had shifted under their feet. Daniel sank back into his chair, head in his hands. "Oh my God," he murmured. "How did I not see it? How did I miss it for so long?" I didn't say, "Because you loved her." I didn't say, "Because she was good at it." He already knew both those things. Instead, I poured him a glass of water and sat beside him. "You were never supposed to see it," I said. "She made sure of that. And when people like her manipulate, they do it slowly, subtly, like turning down the temperature 1 degree at a time." She always said she was protecting me," he whispered. "From me," I said softly. He looked up, pain and shame tangled in his eyes. "She told me you were forgetful, that you'd been acting strangely, that you were better off not being involved in stressful events. She made you think I was fading," I said, "because if I became irrelevant, I couldn't threaten her control." He nodded, then wiped his face. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I should have seen it." "You were doing your best," I told him. "You were being a husband, a father, a provider. That's not a flaw, Daniel. That's love. She used your goodness against you." We sat in silence a while longer, until Jaden popped his head into the room. "Are we having dessert?" he asked, his eyes hopeful. Daniel looked at me helplessly. "Of course," I said, managing a smile. "Go wash your hands. I'll bring it out." He disappeared with a happy shout. For now, he didn't know. There would be conversations later, gentle, careful ones. There would be family therapy, shared custody talks, legal paperwork, and possibly courtrooms. But tonight, there would be carrot cake. Later, when the children had gone to bed upstairs in the guest room, Daniel and I sat at the kitchen table, sipping decaf coffee. The manila folder now rested between us, its contents no longer a threat, but a foundation for whatever came next. "She said she wanted early retirement," Daniel said suddenly. "Told me I should quit my job so we could spend more time together." I raised an eyebrow. "At 38? He nodded. "She kept saying work was draining me, that the corporate world was toxic, that I should cash out some stock options and just reset." He used air quotes with a bitter laugh. "She wanted to isolate you completely," I said. "You were one step away from depending on her for everything. She was even pushing for us to move out of state," he added. "Somewhere quieter. Said it was for the kids. Somewhere I couldn't visit." I finished for him. Daniel looked at me. And for the first time in a long while, I saw the boy. I used to know the boy who used to ask me for advice, who used to call just to tell me he'd gotten a raise or burned dinner. "I want to fix this," he said. "All of it." "You don't have to fix it alone," I replied. "We'll do it together." And we would. Together. Because now, the truth was out. The mask had fallen. And the woman who'd tried so hard to erase me from my own family's story was gone. Sabrina, or rather, Monica, left that night without a word, her footsteps echoing down the driveway like the final notes of a song none of us wanted to hear again. The door closed, and silence followed, thick and unfamiliar. It wasn't the kind of silence that had haunted me on my birthday, or the kind that had pressed against the walls of my house for the last few years. This silence felt different. It felt like exhalation, like relief, like the end of a storm we didn't realize we'd been living through until it had passed. But of course, the storm had left damage behind, and now we had to pick through the wreckage one piece at a time. The following weeks passed in a strange rhythm. Daniel filed for divorce immediately. There were no fights from Monica, no custody battle, no fiery last stands. She didn't even try to negotiate. Her lawyer relayed the message simply. She was willing to relinquish full custody of both children in exchange for avoiding a public courtroom and potential fraud investigation. It was like she knew she had already lost and wasn't interested in fighting a war where the truth was the only weapon. That, in itself, was another wound. I couldn't stop thinking about the fact that she'd walked away so easily. From Daniel, from the life she'd built, from her own children, that she could look at Jaden and Lily, two beautiful, loving, curious kids, and decide they weren't worth the effort. Maybe it shouldn't have surprised me after everything we'd learned. But it did. Because even through all her manipulation, I believed on some level she loved them. I believed she at least wanted to be their mother. But Monica didn't want to be anyone's mother. She wanted control. And once she lost it, she had no use for the role. Jaden was the first to notice something had changed. He didn't ask much at first. Just little questions in the car, or while eating cereal. Is Mommy coming back? Why is Daddy sleeping at Grandma's house? Why do I have two daddies now? Daniel and I sat him down one evening with Michael there too. We didn't use words like DNA or paternity. We didn't say anything cruel about Monica. We told him, simply and honestly, that families can be complicated, but love doesn't go away just because the truth is hard. You have two people who love you like a son, Daniel said, kneeling to Jaden's level. And nothing about that changes, okay? You're safe. You're loved. Jaden didn't cry. He just nodded, then turned to Michael and asked if they could build another dinosaur fort. Lily was younger and a little more affected. She became clingy for a while, crying at night, asking where her mommy went. She had nightmares, became anxious if Daniel left the room. That hurt the most. Seeing her tiny face twisted in confusion, too young to understand betrayal, but old enough to feel abandonment. We started family therapy. A kind, patient woman named Dr. Holland helped us untangle our feelings and talk openly with the kids. She helped Daniel process the fact that the woman he had once loved had never truly existed. Helped me understand that grief doesn't just come when someone dies. It comes when something you trusted falls apart. And she helped Michael begin to build a connection with a son he had only known from a distance for so long. Michael took it slow. He never pushed, never demanded. He visited every afternoon after school, brought science kits and books and funny facts about animals that made Jaden light up. He brought Lily dolls and snacks and read to her in the gentlest voice. It didn't take long for both children to start asking when Daddy Dave was coming over again. That's what they called him now, Daddy Dave. It was Jaden's idea. We didn't correct it. We embraced it. Eventually, Michael rented an apartment just 10 minutes from us. Not too close, not too far. It gave the kids space to get used to this new rhythm, and gave Michael time to become more than a visitor in their lives. As for Daniel, he moved back into his house, the one he had once shared with Monica. But everything about it felt different now. He redecorated, repainted the kitchen, donated furniture that reminded him of her, and let the kids pick out new curtains and artwork for their rooms. They chose colorful drawings of outer space and wild animals. The house began to feel like it belonged to them again, not just physically, but emotionally. The air felt lighter. They laughed louder. They opened windows. And every Sunday, like clockwork, they came to my house for dinner. Jaden would burst through the door first, hugging me tightly around the waist before announcing what he learned in school. Lily would hold out a bouquet of daisies, my favorite, usually a little wilted from the car ride, but always presented with such love that I didn't care. Daniel looked healthier with each visit. the stress lines around his eyes softening week by week. And Michael always brought dessert, always careful to ask if I needed help setting the table or washing up afterward. We didn't pretend everything was perfect. It wasn't. But it was real. Honest. A family rebuilt on truth instead of illusion. One Sunday afternoon after dinner, Jaden pulled me aside and whispered, "Grandma, I'm glad you found Daddy Dave." I smiled, kneeling to look him in the eyes. "I'm glad too, sweetheart." Then he said more quietly, "Mommy was always mad. She made my tummy hurt. My heart ached, but I didn't let the pain show. I just pulled him into a hug and whispered, 'You're safe now. That's what matters.'" That night, after the kids fell asleep on the couch watching cartoons, the three of us adults sat around the kitchen table with coffee and leftover pie. Daniel stared at the window for a long time, then turned to Michael and said, "I want to thank you." Michael looked surprised. "For what?" "For telling the truth. For not disappearing. For giving Jaden something real." Michael's voice was quiet. "I almost didn't. I was scared of disrupting his life, of making things worse." "You made things better," I said gently. "For all of us." Daniel nodded. "Yeah, you saved us." It was the truth. And it was something I never thought I'd say, not about a man I hadn't known a month earlier. Not about someone who had every right to demand, to rage, to burn it all down. But Michael hadn't done any of that. He had walked into our lives carefully, respectfully, and with his heart wide open. And because of that, we weren't just surviving anymore. We were healing. We were beginning again. The healing didn't happen all at once. It wasn't like Monica left and suddenly everything felt easy or normal. That's not how wounds work, especially the ones you don't see. They take time and truth and a whole lot of love to close. But slowly, piece by piece, we started to stitch ourselves together again. Not in the exact shape we were before, no. That version of us was long gone. But what we were building now was stronger because it was built on honesty, on mutual respect, and on the quiet determination to never be manipulated again. It had been 6 months since the night we exposed Monica's lies. 6 months of therapy sessions, hard conversations, and new traditions. 6 months of figuring out how to co-parent across bloodlines, how to communicate without secrets, and how to love each other as we truly were, not as the versions Monica had tried to mold us into. Every Sunday, without fail, we had dinner together, me, Daniel, Michael, Jaden, and Lily. Some weeks, Daniel cooked. Other times, Michael brought takeout or baked something from scratch with Jaden's help, proudly presenting burnt cookies or lopsided pies. I kept my kitchen warm, the fridge full, and the table set with the good china I'd once reserved for holidays. Now, it was for family. Real family. One Sunday, after everyone had helped clean up and the kids were playing in the living room, Michael lingered near the sink, drying his hands with a dish towel. I noticed he seemed hesitant, like he was carrying something heavy in his chest. "Helen," he said softly, "can I ask you something a little personal?" I turned to him. "Of course." He cleared his throat and said, "I've been thinking about Jaden's last name." I stilled, heart tightening just a bit. "What about it?" Michael looked down, then met my eyes with sincerity. "I don't want to change it. I'd never ask to take away the name he's had his whole life. It's his identity, and it connects him to you and Daniel and Lily. But I was thinking maybe I could add to mine." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded form, a legal name change petition. "David Michael Tran Patterson. So Jaden and I would share something. A bridge, you know, but still honoring where he came from." I felt my throat tighten. "Michael, That's beautiful. I just want him to know, he said gently, that love doesn't cancel out what came before, it adds to it. When Daniel joined us at the counter and heard what Michael had proposed, he smiled genuinely, with that old brightness I hadn't seen in years. That's perfect, he said, offering his hand. Thank you for thinking about our family that way. In that moment, it struck me. We weren't a patched-up version of a broken thing. We were a whole new shape. Unconventional? Maybe. But love doesn't need convention. It needs truth and effort and the courage to stay when things get hard. And all three of us, me, Daniel, and Michael, had chosen to stay. Jaden and Lily were thriving in the new normal. They'd adjusted with the kind of resilience that only children seem to have. Jaden split his time between Daniel and Michael with ease, never questioning the arrangement. He had two dads, and as far as he was concerned, that just made him lucky. At school, when he drew pictures of his family, he always included all of us. Me with a big gray bun, Daniel and Michael with goofy smiles, Lily in a pink dress, and even our dog Bruno, who had entered the picture just 2 months ago, adopted by Daniel at Jaden's insistence after their first full therapy milestone. Dogs help kids feel secure, Jaden had explained with such seriousness. I didn't have the heart to argue. And Lily, sweet, quiet Lily, had begun to blossom. She no longer clung to Daniel's leg at drop-off or cried when he left the room. Instead, she proudly brought home her preschool drawings and made sure I got one every Sunday. "This one's for you, Grandma," she'd say, slipping me construction paper hearts and crooked letters. Her anxiety was melting, replaced by trust, because for the first time in her life, no one was pretending anymore. That spring, we took our first family trip together to the zoo. Nothing fancy. Just a day with snacks and sunscreen and worn-out sneakers. We didn't post pictures online. We didn't stage matching outfits. But someone snapped a photo near the elephant enclosure. And when I printed it out a week later, I stared at it for a long time. Jaden was sitting on Michael's shoulders, pointing at the elephants with wonder. Lily was holding Daniel's hand, mid-giggle. I stood beside them, caught mid-laugh, the breeze lifting the edge of my scarf. And Daniel, he stood in the middle of us all, one arm wrapped around my shoulders, the other around Michael. We looked like a family, a real one. No masks, no secrets. Just a group of people who had been through something dark and had come out the other side stronger, together. That night, as I sipped tea alone in my living room after they'd all gone home, my phone buzzed with a message from Daniel. Daniel. "Thanks for dinner, Mom. The kids are asking if we can do this every Sunday forever." I told them that was up to Grandma. I smiled, typing back. "Every Sunday sounds perfect. This is what families do." Daniel. "Yeah. This is what real families do." I set the phone down and looked around my living room at the toys scattered across the floor, the drawings pinned to my fridge, the photo from the zoo on the mantle. None of it matched what I used to dream family would look like. But it felt true, and I realized something else then. Monica hadn't destroyed our family. She'd only exposed its weak points. She'd shaken us, yes, but in doing so, she gave us the chance to rebuild stronger, wiser, kinder. She had tried to control everything to make us small, manageable, easy to manipulate. But what she couldn't understand was that real love, real family, can't be controlled. It expands, it adapts, it grows around the wounds and holds you together when everything else falls apart. In her absence, we weren't just surviving, we were becoming. Looking back now, I realize that the most painful moments in life can also be the ones that bring about the greatest change. When Monica stood at my door all those months ago, smiling, polished, unknowingly carrying a storm behind her, I could never have predicted how deeply her deception would cut into our family. And yet, I also never imagined how much healing could grow from the very wounds she left behind. What began as heartbreak became a chance to rediscover what love looks like when it's honest, what trust means when it's earned, not demanded, what family becomes when it's not defined by biology or obligation, but by the courage to show up again and again, even after everything falls apart. There were nights I doubted myself, nights I wondered if I was just an old woman clinging to the past. But I wasn't wrong to ask questions. I wasn't wrong to trust my instincts. And neither are you. Sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the ones who wear the sweetest smiles. Sometimes silence is not peace, it's erasure. And if you're watching this today, feeling like maybe you've been pushed to the sidelines of your own family, let me tell you, you matter. Your love, your memories, your place in their lives, it matters. Truth has a way of shining through, even when it's buried under years of lies and manipulation. And love, when it's real, will always find its way back. Today, I sit at the same dining table that was once filled with loneliness and unspoken pain, but now it's filled with laughter, spilled juice boxes, crayon drawings, and Sunday night casseroles. The table didn't change. We did. And maybe that's the real miracle. So now, dear listener, I want to ask you, have you ever been made to feel invisible in your own family? Have you ever suspected something was wrong, but no one believed you? Have you ever been pushed out by someone who claimed to love the people you love? If you have, I hope my story gives you the courage to speak, to ask questions, to stand tall in the truth, even when it shakes everything around you. Because healing starts with honesty. And love, the real kind, will never require you to shrink. Let me know in the comments, what would you have done in my shoes? Would you have confronted the truth? Or stayed silent to keep the peace? I'll be reading your stories, because your voice, like mine, deserves to be heard. And remember, from my heart to yours, it's never too late to reclaim your place at the table.